Alrighty, welcome everyone. I'm Tiabu, and I am here to talk about all the treasure hunting that I've been doing. I haven't really been doing the daily reports, so this is going to be a long one, and then I'll try and keep up with more daily reports and make them that way. But we've watched a whole bunch of shows, and might as well just go through them and give you my general thoughts so that you can use this as like a touchstone for deciding whether there are things that you want to watch. Now, obviously, this is all opinionated, and you can ignore all of it because your opinions are your own. Don't listen to my take on all of these shows. Maybe give them a shot, even if I didn't like them. Some of them, though, I'm going to be really adamant about them sucking. So, we had I'm just going to go in the order that I watched these. I made a list. Here we go. It Invaded. This is by Studio Nax, whatever. Really interesting ideas at play in these first two episodes that dropped a couple of weeks ago. I've got the reaction to it, and I'll edit it up and I'll put it up today, so it'll probably be up before this video comes out. Some interesting ideas at play. The whole concept of like being Sherlock Holmes who goes and literally invades people's ids, invades their subconscious, is pretty interesting, and the whole reset mechanic is pretty interesting. However, the visual aesthetic of this show is butt fucking ugly. I really do not like the visual aesthetic. The backgrounds look terrible. The characters look pretty terrible. It all looks pretty fucking terrible, and I think it's really unfortunate because I think that the story at play and the ideas and trying to demonstrate them visually would be a really interesting challenge. And I think it does an okay job of demonstrating its ideas. Like, as the barest bones of animation in order to tell a story, it's fine. But I come to animation because it's a medium where you get the intersection of various art forms, and that usually elevates a work. In this case, I think it detracts from the writing, because the writing is really solid so far in id. The characters are interesting, but they all look like shit, and I really fucking hate it. Yeah, I'd say probably watch this. If you don't mind the aesthetic, then you'll have a good time with it because it's a well-written show with interesting characters and interesting ideas in a cyberpunky sort of way. But it's fucking ugly. And if you look at it and you don't think this is fucking ugly, then I'll put some shots of It Invaded up here, and I swear I won't have cherry picked these to be the uglier shots from the sequence. They're all fucking ugly. The entire show is really ugly. And then I'll put some shots of Psychopaths up here, and just like look at the difference in the aesthetic of a very similar type of mind-bending cyberpunky piece of fiction. Or I could do the same thing with Ghost in the Shell. Like, its aesthetic is not only visually unappealing to me, it also, while I appreciate the intent of like breaking away from conventions, if I'm going to give them credit for intending to break away from conventions around cyberpunk landscapes, but I fucking love the cyberpunk landscape aesthetic, and I would like it in this show as well. So I'm going to be giving It Invaded a miss, but that's not to say that you shouldn't watch it, because it's also got some really good redeeming features to it. It's just really ugly. But again, also aesthetics are personal and opinionated, so you can just ignore me on that one. Next, the next show that I watched, which was a couple weeks later, but just a few days ago, was on sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, straight up. Like, it's gorgeous, and I think it's beautiful. It's Somali Tomori no Kami-sama, or Somali and the Forest Spirit, or Forest God. And it's about this like crazy world where beast people are all the people and there are not that many humans. This first episode was rather beautiful. The color and just general aesthetic of this show breathes life and an alien like wonderful landscape with really interesting creature designs and almost like a Star Warsy type of feel as they walk into a particular city, and we see all these strange beast, half humanoid entities that just coexist. It's kind of got this whole melting pot of different things going on, and it seems like it's going to be episodic adventures where we learn things. We set up a very clear sort of parent and child relationship between the two main characters, one of whom is a golem who is clearly reaching the end of his lifespan, the other of whom is a little human girl who's just the most protectable. She's really fucking cute, and they are adventuring around and trying to make sure that nobody figures out she's a human, because everybody else thinks that humans are delicious, and that's a bit of a problem. Show is gorgeous. don't know if its story is going to be able to hold my attention. There were a couple of like minor writing faux pas, like a particular exposition scene in the first episode that made me think that it might be kind of boring, but it's also an Iyashikei kind of feel to the show, so boring might be fine. It's cute and it's kind of silly, and it's got this sort of Kino no Tabi vibe of adventuring through weird and strange places and discovering things about ourselves and about society and about life and whatever. It's a pretty show. I don't know if the writing is going to hold up as we move along. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of an inverse of It Invaded, where I think the writing for It Invaded is going to be one of the strongest in the season, but it's fucking ugly. Whereas Somali Tomori is really pretty, but I don't know if the writing is going to hold up. Weird. Next up, Darwin's Game, Edgefest. Dropped a double-length episode. I wish they hadn't. It's a pretty ugly-looking show. I really don't like most of the aesthetic choices in the show. It's simultaneously, like, pretty bland, and then there are just some really funky scenes. Some people were asking me why I burst out laughing during the first death of the episode, and I'll just like roll the clip here because it's ridiculous. I think that this death is like almost Mars of Destruction head explosion level of ridiculous. It's simultaneously like trying to be very serious, and then it's hammy, and it fails entirely at creating the tone of like murder that they're intending. It's ridiculous. But that's not a valid criticism of like the whole episode. The more valid criticism of the whole episode is that it's a really generic death game with a really generic token waifu character, and a pretty boring aesthetic and some really weird choices going on in direction. Shot composition in particular was kind of baffling. Which means most likely the manga paneling is probably kind of baffling. Did not like this episode. Didn't hate it, and I don't even hate the aesthetic as much as I disliked It Invaded's aesthetic, but it has no redeeming features for me. I guess if you're really into this kind of a Mirai Nikki-esque death game, then maybe this will be appealing to you. It's not to me. Next, Magia Record. Riding in on the coattails of Mahou Shoujo Madoka Magica, an absolute masterpiece of a show, in my personal opinion, and the opinions of many others, I think. This felt not as good. That said, it could be a really slow burner. It's got a lot of episodes coming out, I assume. It's based on a gacha game, and the first episode's introduction kind of it relies pretty heavily on your knowledge of the Madokaverse, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's a little bit different than the previous entries in the Madoka Magica franchise because it's directed by Gekidan Inukuri, the people responsible for the witchy segments. I really like Gekidan Inukuri's general weird, creepy aesthetic that they use. I've liked every time I've seen it in Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei, and I've liked every time it shows up in Madoka Magica. Their style is really recognizable and unique and spooky, especially for like reality breaking or bending things. I don't know how I feel about them as directors for a more normal show. It just feels a little bit off all the way through. I'll probably give the next couple of episodes a watch. I don't know if I'll react to them, but I'll probably give them a watch since sometimes a show like this takes an episode or two to actually get rolling. But this was just meh. I didn't really feel too much about the first episode of Magia Record. It was okay. I cannot say the same thing about the next show that I watched, which was Eizouken. Look, everybody's gonna be talking about this show. It's ridiculous. It's Yuasa. It's gorgeous. It manages to blend nostalgia and novelty in a really unique and fascinating way. It's a show in a medium about the medium itself is portraying, and then it's doing this crazy, wonderful meta thing where it's paying homage to the animators who have come before while being simultaneously something entirely new and different. There's this sequence at the end of the first episode that's just fucking awesome, and you need to watch it, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. Go watch this show. If you're not watching this show, you have no taste. Straight up. Yeah. Yep. Also, the OP is a fucking banger, and you should listen to it. Eizouken is really good. I don't think anybody's going to be coming out and saying that Eizouken is not really good, because it's really, really, really good, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. It's going to be a pretty wild ride. And then we come to today's shows. There were 3 of them today. We had Murenase Seiton Gakuen, which I got about 5 minutes into. I hate everything about it. Yeah, I found it really ugly. I find the character designs really unappealing. I found the entire pace of the introductory sequence, which is essentially like entirely aware that it's reliant on cliches and doesn't care, but also doesn't seem to be trying to do anything interesting with them. It's just setting up the story that way because it's an easy way to set up a story. Whole thing felt really lazy and slapped together. There were a couple of interesting cuts in the OP. The animal characters' designs are pretty cool, but the character designs for the more humanoid characters are fucking ugly as sin, and I really don't like the look of this show, the pace of this show, the way that the gags in the show function. None of them were funny to me. I don't know what the appeal of this show is. I guess if you find the main girl, the little pink-haired girl, attractive, then like this will be a thing for you. But unless you have a serious thing with like non-furry furry girls with animal ears, specifically pink-haired ones that look really ugly and have weird hair coloring, then I guess this is the show for you. If not, I would give this one a miss because I really didn't like it. Next thing I watched today was Sorceress Stabby Orphen, and I didn't really understand what the hell this show was going for until I went and I looked and I realized that the novels that it is based on came out in 1994. It feels like a show out of 1994 and a Dean adaptation of one. I'm super ambivalent toward this first episode. I watched the entire first episode, could not bring myself to watch through the ED, but up until that point, I watched the entire first episode. We start with a pretty weird prologue flashback thing where a girl turns into a dragon. Looks pretty cool. Do some very generic magic sigil magics, and I guess introduce our main character, who is the titular orphan, with an E, not an A, but yes, it is that he is an orphan, not an orphan, but an orphan at the same time as being named Orphan. Okay. Um, he went to a magic school and now is a dropout. Our actual introduction to the character is him chasing down and then literally beating the shit out of 2 small children. That is the introduction to our main character, which seems ridiculous and is probably a bad idea, but I guess it made sense in 1994. So, okay. We find out that these 2 kids are schemers in a like we're gonna rob people sense, and they invite him along on a journey where he eventually ends up clashing with this girl from his past who turned into a giant green dragon over a sword. I don't know what the fuck is going on in this show, and I honestly can't be asked to care. It was a pretty weird first episode. Maybe give it a watch. If you like it, you'll like it. If you really love shonen, you'll probably like it. I didn't really like it. It was okay. And then I watched Pet. Pet episode 1 was pretty good. There's some really spooky stuff going on with the way that the show is misleading you. It's pretty clear that we have like, it's not even an unreliable narrator, it's unreliable perception of the entire world, because characters in this show can mess with other people's minds. And so anytime we're in the perspective of a character within the show, you can't be certain if what you're seeing is real, and you can't be certain if what you see after that is real as well. You really have no idea what the fuck is going on, and it turns out fascinating. There are a number of very colorful, very interesting sequences. The framing and shot composition and general direction and flow of scenes is pretty spot on, I would say, which you would expect from the guy who directed fucking Bakano and Durarara, 2 other shows that use sort of anachronistic storytelling and like weird pacing to create specific visual and like pacing effects. Shaping up to be a pretty interesting show. I would watch it. If you don't like it, you don't like it, but you'll probably like it. It's got some nice creepy stuff in it, and some really excellent, not quite gags, but gags that aren't comedy. They lean into horror instead, and the moments where those actually trigger are pretty fascinating and pretty spooky. So, summary. Things that I will be continuing to watch. Definitely Eizouken. Probably Pet. That's it. I would be willing to give Somali no Mori another episode or two, but I'm just not that interested in it. I definitely won't watch more Darwin's Game. I might watch more Magia Record. I probably can't bring myself to watch more It Invaded. And Muranase Seiton Gakuen and Sorceress Stabby Orphen are totally out. So mostly my focus is on Eizouken is number 1 right now. Pet is probably number 2. And then everything else sort of falls pretty far behind that, with probably Magia Record coming in number 3. Yeah, that sounds about right. Anyway, that's my take on all the shows that I've seen. Can't wait to talk to other people about them and realize that everybody has different opinions on different things, which is totally okay. Can't wait to be called trash taste because of my taste. Be fun. In any case, I'll probably be doing more treasure hunt reports like this in the next couple of days because there are more shows coming out in the next couple of days. Not a lot that I'm really looking forward to, with the exception of maybe Haikyuu. But there's a whole bunch of weird stuff that's coming that could be really interesting. Like Jibaku Shonen Hanako-kun, sorry. And there's something else. I don't remember. There are a couple. Oh, Dodo Hedoro. Yeah. A couple of more things to look forward to. Bunch of other stuff that's probably going to be trash, but we're going to watch it anyway, because that's what I do with my life now. And it's pretty great. All right. That'll be a wrap for me. Me to Yabu. These are the shows that I watched. Watch Eizouken. You probably already have. Watch the episode again. Fuck it. Give Pet a shot. It's pretty cool. Pretty spooky. Pretty weird. Got some crazy psychological mind-bendy stuff going on. It's pretty nice. Everything else, I don't really care about. Cool. Peace.